if any of these things happen. And I think we started to speak about this last time, but that seems to be the one area of specialty that so many lawyers clamor to get involved in. What makes it more worthwhile than any other, seemingly, any other area of law?
Well,
worthwhile to the lawyer,
two
I should
things.
say.
Well, two things.
Preparation, investigation.
You raised two issues, though. You used the word specialization, and Jackie will tell us.
There
in
is.
Rhode
You
Island,
cannot specialize in Rhode Island.
Well,
Right.
they put a focus
Right.
on
yeah.
attracting
There are
such
a lot of
clients.
people who practice in
The
the
area.
personal injury
Okay.
area. And the reason is because you're not trying to collect a fee directly from your client, so a lot of people who are injured are more willing to hire a lawyer to help them with those things, and rightfully so, because as you said, it's complicated. We haven't even touched upon the complicated stuff yet, but it is very complicated. There's a lot of things you have to know about insurance policies, and when you can collect above and beyond what the tort fees are, the person who hurt you, what their policy might cover you for. Your own policy may cover you. And people will come in and say, I don't want to collect on my own policy because I don't want my rates to go up. They can't go up if it's done properly because of the fault of somebody else. So there's
That's a good point to make.
a lot of complicated issues that you need a lawyer for. And it is lucrative for lawyers. That's why lawyers like that practice of law.
But certainly in the short time that we've had to discuss one facet of it, you've explored many details that certainly do underscore that it's a complicated issue. And now you wanted to go on and explain more in the very short amount of time, well, seemingly short amount of time that we have to cover. We may need to continue this a little bit later, but I know that you had other issues that you
Right.
wanted to talk about with this, so let's go on to another example.
Well, we had been talking about the negligence based on we covered it pretty well, defective stairway
Stairwell.
and all of that. We talked about slip and falls and snow and ice. The insurance issues get complicated in auto accident cases. I know we covered auto accident a little bit before. We should talk about some of that, and then perhaps next time try to get into maybe even medical malpractice.
That's a very big,
Right.
contentious issue.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about insurance. In Rhode Island, in Massachusetts different, I'll give you a little bit of the Rhode Island coverage and then Jackie can chime in with some Mass. In Rhode Island we have several different policy coverages that you can have, provisions in your policy. You have your negligence, which is a coverage that liability, if you're responsible for someone else's damages, they can sue you, your insurance company will protect you. You should always have what I call full coverage, which is not that much more expensive, to protect you. And the coverages that kick in Rhode Island, there are med pay, which is if you're involved in an accident, regardless of whether it's your fault or someone else's fault, it will cover your medical bills up to a certain amount. Some policies $2,500, some $5,000, some more. And the other very important coverage in Rhode Island is uninsured motorist coverage, which is both uninsured if the other party who hit you is uninsured, and underinsured if they don't have enough coverage to cover your damages. Two things you need to know. Rhode Island does now have compulsory insurance. Everyone has to have insurance. Not everybody does. So you need that uninsured motorist coverage. The other thing in Rhode Island, which is different from Massachusetts, is if you're injured, and say you're severely injured, the minimum policy in Rhode Island generally for liability is $25,000. If somebody has a $25,000 policy and it does not cover the amount of your damages, your uninsured motorist will become underinsured motorist coverage and provide you for coverage up to the amount of the policy limit if it's required or whatever your damages would warrant. So that's an important factor.
That is. Jackie?
In Massachusetts, I alluded to earlier, you have that $2,000 threshold of damages before an insurance company will allow you to collect for personal injury, pain, and suffering. What you have as a driver should have similar coverages, except we have, instead of med pay, it's called PIP, personal injury protection, and that pays your medical, up to $2,000. If it's over $2,000 and you don't have health insurance, it can pay up to $8,000. It also pays lost wages, which is very nice. Again, it's up to that limit. Once it's over that, you don't get more than that from a PIP coverage. Everybody has to have that coverage in Massachusetts, and insurance is compulsory.
Right.
And the same as David said, if you don't have insurance, that's when you look to your uninsured or underinsured coverage.
And in Mass, I guess they call that no-fault insurance.
No fault
Yeah.
that we've heard so
And
much.
also, as that goes, it's a percentage, right, of the lost wages?
Yes, it's not 100%. They calculate a percentage of your lost wages. Not everybody understands that, and it's also important for the attorney to get a wage statement from their employer so that they can get an average weekly wage for the client, and the client doesn't just rely on what an insurance company sends them or calculates as an average weekly wage.
And the other big difference, Rhode Island versus Massachusetts, the uninsured motorist coverage, when it becomes underinsured motorist coverage, does not set off your damages against the policy limit. And what I'm saying there is, in Rhode Island, if you have a claim that's worth $100,000 and you have $25,000 in uninsured motorist coverage and the tortfeasor had $25,000, you're going to get 50. You're 25 and the other party's 25. In Mass, the limit, the minimum is 20,000. And if you only have a $20,000 uninsured motorist coverage, they offset the policy from the tortfeasor first. So if they had 20 and you only have 20, you're not getting anything more on uninsured motorists. That first 20,000 comes off of your 20,000.
Explain to me, in the time that we have left, when someone has had such an injury and they come in to see you, are you able to explain all of this in a single session, or is this something that plays out over many months before you even get to whatever might be a settlement?
I think an initial consultation takes sometimes an hour, maybe even an hour and a half, and yeah, we do have plenty of time to explain the process.
Right, and we can focus in on that person's issues. So all of these things may not apply to one case. We can look at the case, we can determine what the main issues are and really explain to them. And that's what we do at our office, is we sit and, so when someone comes in, they understand the process, what their rights are, and how this is going to play out over the course of time. What we can answer, which is sometimes
Right.
what they really
What
want to
they're
know
gonna
when they
get for
come in,
damages
what
is
am
a
I going to
settlement.
What's
get?
the bottom
Yeah.
line?
How do we know? We're not fortune tellers. We can't tell you how your treatment's going to go. And it's all based on how you recover. If you have a miraculous recovery, it doesn't matter how strong the impact of the auto accident was, how negligent the other party was. You had a great recovery. Good for you. So much the better. But you're not going to get as much money as if it took a long time for you to recover, and you may never recover fully.
In the coming weeks, the next issues, if they are continuing to be about personal injury, medical malpractice is something that I think people have been concerned about for years. They've talked about having reform. We haven't even touched on the topic itself, so perhaps we can deal with that one, as well as what's become a critical issue, ongoing issue from this time we started Legal Matters, which is that there have been issues about credit collections, bankruptcies, that process, and apparently, just as we've had these emails recently, there's been an issue about what there might be in terms of collection abuses, which Jackie deals with quite a bit, as well as the rest of the firm, but certainly Jackie. And I think that in the next week or coming sessions that we will probably have to cover those, because those seem to be where the emails are focusing. We'd like to once again thank Jackie Grasso and David Bazar from the law firm Audette, Bazar, Cordeiro Grasso in East Providence. And they continue to invite your questions, not just about bankruptcy, but personal injury and other topics that we've covered. In upcoming segments, we will be covering a wide variety of issues, more on personal injury, some on this collection issue, and we do hope that you'll be tuned in, and we do invite you to send in emails. We are happy to answer them, and in future months we may be looking at an occasion to have an audience and have you actually be able to ask our lawyers some questions specifically. More on that later. The discussion about legal matters continues, and we hope that you'll stay tuned.